How much time should we spend on learning a new skill before we move on to something new? Let's say we're starting a new company and we have to learn a bunch of new skills. How do we best allocate our time? My name is Nima Kocheki. In this video, we'll discover how to acquire new skills quickly, understand when to deepen our knowledge or pivot to something new, and how to overcome the inevitable plateaus in learning. The myth is that you need thousands of hours to become skilled at something. I think a lot of this comes from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, where he points out that masters, true masters like the Beatles, put in more than 10,000 hours to reach mastery. But that's mastery. You can definitely pick up a skill faster than that. To illustrate this point, let's listen to parts of this TED Talk from Josh Kaufman.
Never going to be able to learn anything new ever again. But that's not true. The 10,000 hour rule came out of studies of expert level performance. Professional athletes, world-class musicians, and the folks at the tippy top of their fields put in around 10,000 hours of practice. But that last statement, it takes 10,000 hours to learn something, it's not true. This is the learning curve. And the story of the learning curve is when you start, you're grossly incompetent and you know it. With a little bit of practice, you get really good really quick. And then at a certain point, you reach a plateau and the subsequent gains become much harder to get. How long does it take from starting something and being grossly incompetent and knowing it to being reasonably good? Here's what my research says: 20 hours. That's it. You can go from knowing nothing. If you put 20 hours of focused, deliberate practice into that thing, you will be astounded at how good you are. 20 hours is doable. That's about 45 minutes a day for about a month. There's a method to doing this. The first is to deconstruct the skill. Decide exactly what you want to be able to do and break it down into smaller and smaller pieces. The more you're able to decide what are the parts of this skill that will actually help me get to what I want, you'll be able to improve your performance in the least amount of time possible. The second is learn enough to self-correct. Get 3 to 5 resources about what it is you're trying to learn. Could be books, could be courses, could be anything. What you want to do is learn just enough that you can actually practice and self-correct, noticing when you're making a mistake and then doing something a little different. The third is to remove barriers to practice. Distractions, television, internet. And the fourth is to practice for at least 20 hours. Now, most skills have what I call a frustration barrier. By pre-committing to practicing whatever it is that you want to do for at least 20 hours, you will be able to overcome that initial frustration barrier and stick with the practice long enough to actually reap the rewards. That's it. It's not rocket science. The major barrier to learning something new is not intellectual. The major barrier is emotional. Feeling stupid doesn't feel good. In the beginning of learning anything new, you feel really stupid. But put 20 hours into anything. You want to learn language? You want to learn how to cook? You want to learn how to draw? Go out and do that thing. It only takes 20 hours.
So, let's be strategic about our learning. We don't need to fear that it will take forever to learn a new skill. It goes way faster than we think. So that's starting something new and the time it takes to learn a new skill. How about further developing that skill? Unfortunately, as we advance, we'll hit a point where we no longer get the same result for our efforts. This is the phase of diminishing returns. John Danaher, a philosophy professor widely regarded as the greatest grappling coach of all time, explains this perfectly through a metaphor.
The most powerful developments are always at the onset of a project. Okay, let's give an example. The jet engine was, I believe, first conceived in the late 1930s, just around the time of World War II. It was developed with great pace because of World War II. That obviously military research was a huge thing back then, and first fielded, I believe, by the Germans in around 1943. Jet aircraft didn't play a big role in World War II. They were there at the end and they did play a significant role, but in terms of numbers, they just weren't there. So by around 1945, you had the onset of the jet age, and the jet engine began to replace the piston engine in most aircraft. It was the new way of doing things. If you look at the pace of development of jet engine aircraft technology from 1945 to 1960, it is unbelievable. There was a solid decade where they were gaining almost 100 miles an hour per year for a decade. That's a form of growth that, I mean, in the world of engineering, that's the only time you see growth like that is in things like Bitcoin, and that's about it. Okay, let's put things in perspective. Okay, in World War II, the standard U.S. aircraft bomber was the B-17, which was a mid-sized bomber with a fairly limited load capacity and I think top speed well below 300 miles an hour. Just 10 years later, you had the B-52, which could fly across continents and deliver nuclear weapons and carry bomb loads of up to 70,000 pounds. In a decade, that happened. If you took a B-17 pilot in 1943 and put them inside a B-52 a decade later, he would literally think he was on a UFO, a ship from another planet. That was the speed of development. Now contrast that with the speed of modern development. If I took you in a time machine and I put you in a civil airliner in 1972, let's say a Boeing 737, it's not that different from what you fly in today.
That's right.
Flies at the same speed, has the same range, flies at the same altitude. It's not that different. The amount of progress between 1973 and 2020 isn't very impressive. But the amount of progress from 1945 to 1955, or even better, 1960, was staggering. And so the initial progress tends to be meteoric, but after that, it tends to be incremental.
We've reached the end of exploring the learning curve and skill acquisition. Do you have a story to share about when you learned a new skill fast, or when you were squeezing for very little results? Please share your experience in the comments below. If you like this video or if it created value for you, please like, share or subscribe. I just started making videos. I'm deeply interested in productivity, motivation, inspiration and health. The videos I create are the videos I would like to watch myself. If you're into self-improvement, you'll probably enjoy what I have to offer. Or if you have any suggestions on videos I should make, please write them in the comments below. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep the conversation going.